Gentleman yields back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous consent request.
Gentleman's recognized.
So I've got 4 documents I'd like to introduce into the record. The first one is Jeffrey Epstein's 6 story played out for years in plain sight. And Acosta is quoted in here saying, "I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone." The second document is entitled, "What Epstein's Bodyguard Warned About His CIA Connections." The third document is from Fox Digital. It's titled, "Epstein's Private Calendar Reveals Planned Meetings with Obama Admin Official CIA Chief." And the last document is Wall Street Journal article that highlights Ehud Barak's 36 meetings with Jeffrey Epstein. He was the former Prime Minister of Israel and head of military intelligence for Israel. It may have held that title when he met Epstein, and then, yes.
Without objection, the gentleman will hold for a second. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one UC request. This is Judge Engelmeyer's decision from August in U.S. versus Epstein, stating the government's 100,000 pages of Epstein files dwarfs the 70-odd pages of Epstein grand jury materials.
Without objection, the gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, I watched some of your Senate hearing yesterday when Senator Kennedy asked you, "You've seen most of the files. Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these women to besides himself?" You replied, according to the transcript, "There is no credible information that he trafficked them to anyone else." You also said somewhere in the hearing and here today that the problem is that the case files are constrained by limited search warrants from 2006 to 2007 and that the non-prosecution agreement hamstrung future investigations. Those constraints only apply to Southern District of Florida. They do not apply to Southern District of New York, the location of the 2019 sex trafficking indictment, which produced many things, including a series of FD 302 documents. According to victims who cooperated with the FBI in that investigation, these documents in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to, victims including minors, such as Virginia Roberts Giuffre, may she rest in peace. That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada. We know these people exist in the FBI files, the files that you control. I don't know exactly who they are, but the FBI does. Have you launched any investigations into any of these people, and have you seen these 302 documents?
Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files and bring forth any credible information, and we're working with Congress not only to divulge that information and produce it to you, but any investigations that arise from any credible investigation will be brought. There have been no new materials brought to me launching a new indictment.
So is the loophole here, or is it your assertion that these victims aren't credible, that the 302s maybe didn't produce credible statements that rise to a probable cause?
It's not my assertion, sir. It's the assertion of 2 different United States attorneys' offices from 3 separate administrations who investigated those same materials in live time.
Are the 302 documents in the FBI's possession?
They reviewed all that, yes, sir.
And so have you reviewed those 302 documents where the victims name the people who victimized them?
If I personally know, but the FBI has.
So how can you sit here and in front of the Senate and say there are no names?
I said
I named one today.
I said we are not in the practice at the Department of Justice FBI of releasing victims' names. That is not what we do. We are also not in the habit of releasing incredible information. That's not what we do. But multiple authorities have looked at the entirety of what we have.
Okay, I got to move on here. Were you present when the AG had the White House event when she released the binders to the social media influencers?
I was, yes.
So if you're willing to meet with social media influencers who stood to benefit from the sensational and sad stories of these victims, will you meet with the victims as well?
The FBI will meet with anyone who has new information.
Will you personally meet with them?
The FBI and the professionals who are handling the cases will.
Were you instructed that it was important to release the documents to the Oversight Committee on the day of my introduction of the discharge petition to release these files?
I don't know what day that was, so no.
Well, they were released that day, and there were victims' names who weren't redacted because they were in such a rush, and the victims are not happy about that. Have you investigated any of the CIA connections? Have you seen the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein? And if you wanted to see it, would they show it to you?
Well, I can speak for the FBI, and that's presuming there's a CIA case file. And I've reviewed everything that the interagency, not I, the FBI, that was provided to us.
Would you be willing to look at the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein?
If there is such a file, and if it has not already been turned over to the FBI will look at any new investigative leads.
Have you made any progress on the pipe bomb investigation January 6th? And have you made any progress on the motive of the Las Vegas shooter?
As to the first, it's an ongoing investigation, and we have made progress. As to the second, sir, I'll have to get back to you.
All right. Thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous
Gentleman
consent
yields back.
request.
Unanimous consent request from the gentleman from New York.
I ask unanimous consent to introduce an unsigned memorandum from July 7, 2025 that says we did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties with the insignia of the Department of Justice and the FBI.
Without objection.
Every time someone gets even remotely close to the real Epstein truth, the story is buried a little deeper, but the question has never been, who is Jeffrey Epstein? The question has always been, who protected him, and why are they still being protected? In an explosive congressional hearing, Representative Thomas Massie dropped 4 devastating documents on the table. The first quotes former U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta being explicitly told that Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone. The second details warnings from Epstein's own bodyguard about his CIA connections. The third, a Fox News report, reveals Epstein's private calendar included scheduled meetings with a senior Obama administration official and the then CIA. Director William Burns. The fourth, the Wall Street Journal investigation, documents 36 meetings between Epstein and former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, ex-head of Israeli military intelligence. Massie then turned to Trump-appointed FBI Director Kash Patel and confronted him with the existence of FD 302 interview reports generated during the 2019 Southern District of New York sex trafficking investigation, reports that, according to cooperating victims, name at least 20 high-profile men to whom Epstein delivered girls, many of them minors like Virginia Giuffre. May she rest in peace. The list allegedly includes former Barclays CEO Jess Staley, a Hollywood producer worth hundreds of millions, a royal prince, a major music industry figure, a prominent banker, a high-ranking government official, a well-known former politician, the owner of an Italian luxury car company, a rock star, a famous magician, at least 6 billionaires, 1 Canadian among them, and more. These are names the FBI already has in its possession, yet when Massie asked Patel whether he had personally reviewed those 302s or opened investigations into any of these individuals, the answer was a masterclass in bureaucratic deflection. The FBI is reviewing the entirety of the Epstein files. No new credible information has surfaced that would justify fresh indictments, and previous investigations under 3 separate administrations found nothing prosecutable. In other words, the victims who came forward and named their abusers are apparently not credible enough, according to the very institutions long suspected of running cover for the powerful. The 2008 Florida non-prosecution agreement that handcuffed future probes does not apply to the 2019 New York case, yet somehow those 20 named men remain untouched. On the very day Massie introduced a discharge petition to force the release of the full Epstein files, the Justice Department rushed documents to Congress so hastily that victim names weren't even redacted, sparking outrage among survivors, while carefully selected social media influencers were invited to the White House for a photo op with empty binders. When Massie pressed Patel on whether the FBI had requested or would request the CIA's file on Epstein, the response was chilling in its compartmentalization. If such a file exists and hasn't already been turned over, the Bureau will look at any new investigative leads. Translation: the left hand claims it doesn't know what the right hand is hiding, and nobody is forcing the issue. This is no longer just the story of one monstrous predator. It is living proof of an ecosystem of impunity where money, influence, and state secrecy merge into a shield stronger than any law. Epstein was not a lone wolf. He was a symptom of a far larger disease, the fusion of financial, political, and intelligence power that renders morality negotiable and child rape classifiable as national interest when it serves the elite. The Sweetheart 2008 Florida deal, the continued open doors at palaces, private jets, and Ivy League campuses for another decade, calendars packed with CIA directors, prime ministers, and global bankers. None of that happens by accident. It happens when wealth and networks purchase immunity. And when Massie finally asked the question that has haunted this case for years, whether Epstein worked for American, Israeli, or other intelligence services, the uneasy silence that followed spoke louder than any polished answer. If Epstein did have agency ties, some of his activities weren't merely tolerated, they were useful. In the shadows of intelligence work, secrets are currency, and crimes can become assets. That is what makes the continued refusal to release those names so terrifying. It is not procedural caution. It is systemic self-preservation. Every time a file is buried, every time a victim's testimony is labeled not credible by the same institutions accused of the cover-up, we are told that truth is negotiable, justice is optional, and accountability only applies to those without private jets. The same government that lectures the world on transparency continues to obfuscate at home the moment the truth threatens the powerful. This is no longer an Epstein scandal. It is an American institutional credibility crisis. As long as those names stay hidden, as long as victims are silenced and credibility is defined by the accused, democracy continues to rot from within. A nation that cannot confront its own corruption cannot protect its children. The facts are not concealed because they are false. They are concealed because they are dangerous. Dangerous to reputations, to institutions, to the illusion of moral authority on which power depends. The victims deserve protection, not betrayal. Justice, not silence. And we, the citizens, deserve to know whether our government values truth over convenience, justice over connections, and humanity over hierarchy. If we cannot even name the men who abuse children because they are too powerful to touch, then what have we become? The only answer is to keep demanding total transparency, to keep asking the uncomfortable questions, to keep watching these hearings not for the theater, but for the patterns of evasion, because democracy only survives when ordinary people refuse to look away from extraordinary corruption. The Epstein truth does not vanish. It is buried. And it is up to us to keep digging until no institutional shovel can cover it again.